It's the foundation of achievement, the spark that ignites momentum, and the compass that keeps you from wandering in circles. Without clarity, you're just moving busy, yes, but not effective. You're climbing, but the ladder might be leaning against the wrong wall. The reason most people never truly win in life isn't because they lack ambition or intelligence. It's because they've never stopped long enough to define what winning even means to them. You cannot hit a target you cannot see. You can't chase a dream you haven't visualized. And yet, most people walk through life responding to whatever is thrown their way. Wake up, go to work, pay the bills, survive the week, repeat. They're caught in motion, not progress. The truth is, the moment you define your vision, truly, deeply define it, is the moment your life begins to shift. That's the power of clarity. It removes hesitation, it eliminates distraction, it gives you permission to say no to what doesn't serve your purpose and hell yes to what does. Clarity starts with brutal honesty. What do you really want? Not what sounds good, not what's safe, not what's acceptable to others, what sets your soul on fire, what outcome makes you lose track of time just thinking about it. Most people are afraid to ask that question because it forces them to confront the fact that they're living far below their potential. But clarity demands truth. It requires looking in the mirror and saying, "This is who I am, this is what I stand for, this is the life I'm going to build." Without clarity, you confuse movement with meaning. You start chasing things that aren't aligned with your values. You say yes to opportunities that drain you, not realizing they're distractions dressed up as progress. But when you're clear, everything changes, decisions become easier, doubt loses its grip, you stop second-guessing yourself because now you know exactly what the win looks like. Clarity creates focus, and focus is how results are born. The human brain is a heat-seeking missile when it has direction. When you give it a vision, a mission, and a burning reason to move forward, it starts filtering everything through that lens. You begin to notice the people, the tools, the ideas that align with your goal. You stop wasting time. You stop entertaining nonsense. You become ruthless about your priorities. That's the power of clear intention. It also gives your energy purpose. Ever notice how tired you feel when you're unsure? Indecision is exhausting. It drains your confidence, but when you're clear, energy flows through you like a river. You wake up ready. You walk differently. You speak with certainty. You attract opportunities because people can feel that you know where you're going. That kind of certainty is magnetic. People follow leaders who are clear. They trust them, invest in them, and believe in them because clarity breeds confidence, and confidence breeds movement. Let's be honest, life is loud, it's noisy. Everyone has an opinion about what you should do. Parents, teachers, friends, social media, everyone's got advice. But if you don't have your own vision locked in, you'll borrow someone else's. You'll chase their dream, their version of success, and eventually wonder why you still feel empty. Clarity shuts out the noise. It puts blinders on your soul and says, "This is my path. This is my race." You don't have time to compare because you're too busy creating. And clarity isn't a one-time event. It's a daily discipline. You don't just define your vision once and call it done. You refine it, sharpen it, reconnect with it every single day, because the clearer you are, the faster you move. The more focused you are, the more unstoppable you become. Without it, you wander. With it, you win. It sounds simple, maybe even cliché, but it's the pivot point between the life you're living and the life you're truly capable of living. Everything in your life right now, your relationships, your finances, your health, your mind, that is a direct reflection of the standards you've accepted. People don't get what they want, they get what they tolerate, and what you tolerate, you become. So if you want more, if you want to win at the highest level, it starts with this. You must raise your standards. Standards are not goals. Standards are not wishes. Standards are what you demand from yourself when no one is watching. They are the invisible contracts you sign with your identity, your character, and your future. A goal says, "I'd like to be fit." A standard says, "I don't miss workouts. This is who I am." A goal says, I want to start a business. A standard says, I build something every single day, even when I don't feel like it. The difference isn't in ability, it's in commitment. It's in identity. When your standards rise, so does your life. The truth is, your life will never go beyond what you believe you deserve. If deep down you think average is okay, you'll live average. If you're used to being around people who complain, who settle, who talk about what's fair and what's easy, that becomes your thermostat setting. But if you decide that mediocre is no longer an option, if you set a new standard that says, I refuse to live a life that's less than extraordinary, then everything begins to change. Not just your actions, your expectations shift, your posture shifts, your language changes. You walk into a room differently when you're holding yourself to a higher standard. And here's what most people don't understand. Raising your standards isn't about perfection. It's about consistency. It's about deciding that excuses are no longer acceptable. You're no longer okay being the person who starts and stops. You're no longer okay being someone who lets fear call the shots. You draw a line in the sand and say, from this moment on, I operate differently. That's not motivational fluff. That's how transformation begins. When you raise your standards, it will feel uncomfortable. You'll stretch. You'll stumble. You might even lose people. Why? Because your new standard threatens the comfort of others. You'll start waking up earlier, taking responsibility, setting boundaries, showing up with more intensity. And not everyone around you will celebrate that. But you're not doing this for applause. You're doing it because something inside of you knows you were made for more. You weren't born to survive. You were born to lead, to create, to dominate the space you were meant to own. Raising your standards also means refusing to negotiate with weakness. Your old patterns will try to pull you back, the voice that says, just skip today, or you've done enough. But high standards don't leave room for that voice. High standards require you to choose growth over comfort, effort over ease, progress over perfection. You stop chasing motivation because you've built a system of personal excellence. Your new standard becomes the floor, not the ceiling. What used to be hard is now your baseline. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your standards. That's the hard truth. That's why some people succeed over and over again, no matter the circumstances. It's not luck. It's not talent. It's because they've trained themselves to expect more from themselves than anyone else possibly could. They don't dabble, they dominate. They've hardwired excellence into their identity, and that only comes from setting higher expectations and meeting them no matter what. So when you look around at your life and something feels off, something feels too small, too stuck, too average, check your standards. Because the moment you decide that what used to be acceptable is no longer acceptable, you reclaim your power. You stop blaming the economy, your upbringing, your circumstances. You take the pen back. You write your own standard. And once you raise it, you don't lower it again. You protect it, you live it, and you enforce it every single day. Everyone experiences pain. It's universal. It shows up in heartbreak, failure, loss, betrayal, fear, rejection. And for most people, pain becomes a prison. They carry it around like a weight, dragging it through every conversation, every opportunity, every decision. They let it define them, confine them, and shape how they see the world. But here's the truth most people avoid. Pain is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of your power. If you choose to use it, pain is feedback. It's raw, it's real, and it never lies. It tells you when something's broken, when something's missing, when something has to change, but it's also a mirror. It reflects back who you are when everything is stripped away. And in that space, when you're face down in the dirt, when the mask is off and the excuses don't work anymore, that's when you meet the version of yourself who's been hiding. That's where the real growth begins. Most people try to numb their pain. They distract themselves with work, with noise, with addiction, with temporary highs that only bury the wound deeper. But when you numb the pain, you numb the potential, because pain has a purpose. It sharpens your instincts. It teaches you what truly matters. It forces you to evolve. And if you're willing to lean into it instead of running from it, you'll find a strength you didn't know existed. That strength was never built in comfort. It was forged in the fire. There's a decision point in every painful experience. Either you let it break you, or you let it build you. And the difference isn't the pain itself. It's what you decide to do with it. You can play the victim. You can stay stuck in your story. You can spend the next 5 years blaming what happened 5 years ago. Or you can rise. You can extract the lesson, harness the emotion, and turn that experience into something that drives you forward like a rocket. Some of the most powerful people you'll ever meet carry scars, not because they're broken, but because they've rebuilt themselves stronger than before. They've walked through darkness and came out with light. They didn't get lucky. They got intentional. They used every moment of pain as fuel. Fuel to speak louder, to love deeper, to serve bigger, to build stronger. Pain taught them what comfort never could. When you own your pain, it loses control over you. It's no longer something that happened to you. It becomes something that happened for you. You stop hiding from your past. You stop avoiding the truth. And in that honesty, you find power. The kind of power that doesn't need to pretend, doesn't need approval, doesn't need validation. Because now you know who you are. You've earned your resilience. You've looked hell in the face and said, "You don't own me." There's something sacred about being shattered and deciding to rebuild. Not to go back to what you were, but to rise into something more. Pain will try to tell you that you're broken, that you're damaged. But the reality is, it's shaping you. It's chiseling away everything that isn't aligned with who you're meant to become. And the deeper the pain, the greater the potential. That's not just poetic, that's practical. Because the people who have felt the most, survived the most, endured the most, those are the ones who carry the most fire. The ones who lead with realness, the ones who no longer flinch at hard things because they've lived through harder. The shift happens when you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this trying to teach me?" That's when pain becomes a teacher, not a tormentor. It shows you your limits so you can break them. It exposes the lies you believed so you can rewrite them. And it awakens the hunger that comfort put to sleep. Because once you've been broken open by pain, you stop fearing life. You start living it fully. You stop walking on eggshells trying to avoid failure or rejection. You've already faced it. You know the feeling. And more importantly, you know you can survive it. You know you can use it. That's the turning point. That's when the pain becomes the reason you succeed, not the excuse you didn't. That's not just a motivational line, it's a law of life. You don't get what you wish for, you don't get what you daydream about. You get what you work for with relentless focus, intensity, and consistency. Most people are stuck in thought loops, strategizing their goals into oblivion, waiting for the perfect moment to move. But the truth is, clarity comes through movement, not more thinking. You want results. You've got to flood the system with action. Not someday, not next week. Now, there is a huge difference between being busy and being effective. A lot of people are busy, running in circles, creating the illusion of progress, but they're not getting any closer to what they want. Why? Because they're taking small, safe, hesitant steps. They're dipping their toes in the water instead of diving in. But success doesn't respond to hesitation. It responds to commitment. It responds to urgency. You want to create a breakthrough in your life. Then stop negotiating with comfort. Stop waiting for all the lights to turn green. You need to act like your life depends on it, because it does. Massive action isn't about doing more things. It's about doing the right things with an unstoppable level of energy and determination. It's about intensity, not just volume. You might send 1 email a day and call it effort. But the person who sends 50 emails, makes 10 phone calls, shows up in person, follows up, and doesn't stop until the job is done, that's the person who wins. That's the person who refuses to be ignored. Because when you show up with massive action, you create a force that's impossible to overlook. One of the biggest lies people believe is that they need to feel ready before they take action, but action creates readiness. Action creates confidence. Confidence doesn't fall from the sky, it's built through proof. The more action you take, the more evidence you gather that you're capable, that you're resourceful, that you're someone who follows through. That repetition rewires your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who hesitates and start becoming someone who executes. That's how transformation happens, not in theory, but in execution. Most people don't fail because they aimed too high and missed. They fail because they aimed too low and hit. They take just enough action to avoid criticism, just enough to feel productive, but not enough to move the needle, and deep down they know it. They know they're holding back. They know they've got more in them. But fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of discomfort, it all keeps them frozen. Massive action destroys fear. When you're in motion, when you're attacking your goals, fear doesn't have time to whisper in your ear. You're too busy creating momentum, and momentum is everything. The hardest part of anything is getting started. But once you move, really move, you tap into something deeper, you become a force of nature. You start getting results faster than you thought possible. Not because the world changed, but because you changed your approach. You stopped dipping your toe in and started cannonballing into your mission with everything you've got. You stopped asking for permission and started making progress. Taking massive action also separates you from the pack. Most people never go all in. They play it safe. They stay in their comfort zone. But when you go all in, when you over-deliver, outwork, outlast, out-hustle, you rise. You become the one people remember, the one who sets the pace, the one who's too committed to be denied. And it's not about being perfect, it's about being relentless. It's about deciding that good enough is not enough, not for you, not for your dream, not for the standard you've set for your life. Massive action doesn't wait for guarantees. It creates its own certainty through effort, repetition, and sheer will. It's about deciding that you're done playing small, that you're done sitting in rooms where nothing grows, that you're done being someone with potential and no results. It's about showing up again and again until the world takes notice, until your results speak louder than your words, until your effort becomes your identity. Because until you do, you'll always be a prisoner to something. Your past, your emotions, your environment, your habits. Your mind is the command center of your life. Every action you take, every word you speak, every outcome you experience, it all begins with a thought. And if you don't take control of that thought, if you don't train it, shape it, challenge it, it will run on autopilot and take you wherever your fear, doubt, and conditioning decide to go. Mastering your mind isn't a suggestion. It's a requirement if you want to win at the highest level. The first truth about the mind is that it's not built to make you successful. It's built to keep you safe. That means it will always default to comfort, to caution, to protection. It's constantly scanning for danger, looking for risk, trying to keep you in the familiar, even if the familiar is miserable. That voice in your head that says you're not ready, you're not good enough, you'll fail like last time, that's not the voice of truth. That's the voice of safety, and if you don't master it, it will dominate your decisions, your emotions, your behavior. It will keep you stuck in patterns that feel secure but produce no progress. Mastering your mind means developing the discipline to think intentionally, to choose thoughts that serve your purpose, instead of letting your default programming run the show. It's about recognizing that thoughts are not facts. Just because your mind tells you something doesn't make it real. Your mind might say, "I can't do this," but you still get to decide whether you act on that or not. That gap between thought and action is where mastery lies. Most people don't pause long enough to realize they have a choice. They believe every thought, they obey every impulse, but you're not your thoughts, you're the thinker. And once you understand that, you take the power back. Your mind is like a muscle, and just like any muscle, it gets stronger through resistance. You don't become mentally tough by avoiding pressure. You grow it by facing challenges, managing stress, pushing through resistance, and choosing the hard thing over the easy one. Every time you do something difficult on purpose, every time you show up when it would be easier to quit, you're rewiring your brain to believe in your own power. And that belief becomes the foundation for unstoppable momentum, but mastering your mind also requires focus. We live in a world that is designed to steal your attention: social media, endless notifications, news cycles engineered to trigger fear and outrage. If you don't discipline your focus, you'll spend your life reacting instead of creating. You'll be pulled in 100 directions, all controlled by someone else's agenda. The mind is powerful, but it's also fragile. It will follow the loudest voice in the room. You have to make sure that voice is yours. You have to train your focus like a laser locked on your mission, immune to distractions, anchored to your vision. And it's not enough to think positive. Positivity without strategy is just noise. Mastery means being brutally honest with yourself. Calling out your own excuses, confronting your own limitations, challenging your own beliefs. Because your thoughts build your identity, and your identity sets the limits of what you think is possible. If you believe you're average, you'll act average. If you believe you're unstoppable, you'll start behaving like someone who is. That belief starts in the mind, and belief isn't something you find, it's something you build, thought by thought, action by action, rep by rep. The people who master their lives are the ones who master their mindset first. They don't let their emotions dictate their standards. They don't let fear write their story. They understand that the most important battle isn't out there, it's inside. It's between who you are and who you could be. And every day, every moment, every decision is a vote for one or the other. You don't have to control every thought, but you do have to take command. You do have to show up for yourself. You do have to decide that your mind will be your weapon, not your cage, because the moment you get comfortable is the moment you start dying. Not physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Comfort is the enemy of growth. It whispers lies like you've done enough, you deserve to rest, you've made it. But winners know that the hunger never ends, that fire inside, the one that drove you to rise in the first place. It can't be extinguished by a little success. It has to be fed daily, not with results, but with purpose, with pressure, with the pursuit of the next level. Hunger isn't about desperation, it's about obsession. It's that internal thermostat that says, I'm not done yet. It's not about comparing yourself to others. It's about competing with your own potential, knowing deep down that no matter how far you've come, you've only scratched the surface. Because greatness is never a final destination, it's a mindset, a standard, a way of life. The hungriest people are not the ones who had nothing. They're the ones who decided that good wasn't good enough, that being average, even successful in the eyes of others, wasn't the goal. Mastery was, and staying relentless isn't about being perfect. It's about never backing down. It's about doing the work when it's boring, when it's hard, when no one's clapping, when the reward feels far away. Most people are motivated for a day, maybe a week. They get inspired, they get excited, but the moment things get uncomfortable, they check out. The relentless don't do that. They push harder, they lean in. When most people stop, they shift into another gear. Not because it's easy, but because they've trained themselves to thrive in discomfort. Hunger wakes you up early. Relentlessness keeps you up late. It's what drives you to keep sharpening your edge even when you're ahead. It's what forces you to outgrow your limits, break your own records, and raise the bar when everyone else is lowering theirs. The relentless don't wait for the conditions to be right, they move anyway. They don't depend on motivation, they depend on discipline. They don't need to feel like it, they do it because it's who they are. Staying hungry means staying connected to your mission. The moment your goals become about money, applause, status, or comfort, you're vulnerable, because when those things fade, so does your drive. But when your hunger comes from something deeper: impact, legacy, contribution, that kind of hunger never dies. It might get quiet, it might shift direction, but it never disappears. It becomes your compass, your fuel. Your edge, relentlessness, is also about how you respond to adversity. Setbacks don't slow the relentless down, they ignite them. Failure isn't a signal to stop. It's data, it's feedback, it's fuel. The relentless don't break, they bend, they adjust, they evolve. They've built themselves mentally, emotionally, and physically to handle pressure most people would run from. And that resilience, that grit, it doesn't come from comfort. It's earned in the moments you wanted to quit and didn't. It's built in silence, in solitude, in sacrifice. It's not glamorous, but it's what separates the elite from the rest. To stay hungry, you have to protect your environment. Surround yourself with people who challenge you, not coddle you. Cut out voices that pacify you and replace them with voices that push you. Because hunger fades in weak environments. It gets drowned out by mediocrity, dulled by convenience, but in the right environment, hunger multiplies. It sharpens, it roars. And when you're around others who are just as relentless, just as committed, you don't just rise, you lead. The world doesn't give anything to those who kinda want it. It bends for those who refuse to back down, who wake up with hunger in their chest and go to sleep with unfinished business in their heart, who push past good enough, who work while others celebrate, who grind while others coast. That's the price of greatness. That's the mindset that builds empires. Hunger is the spark. Relentlessness is the engine. You need both, because talent without hunger dies in comfort, and vision without relentless execution never leaves the ground. That's not a slogan, it's a truth. Life expands in direct proportion to how much you give, and I'm not just talking about money. I'm talking about energy, time, attention, service, love, presence, intention. Most people think they'll give more once they have more. They say, once I have more time, I'll help out. Once I have more money, I'll donate. Once I have more energy, I'll show up. But that's backwards. Because the people who give the most are not always the ones who have the most. They're the ones who understand that giving is what creates abundance in the first place. When you give more, you break free from the prison of self-focus. You shift from surviving to serving. And in that shift, something powerful happens. Your problems shrink, your vision expands, your spirit comes alive. Giving takes you out of your head and into your heart. It forces you to stop asking, what can I get? And start asking, what can I contribute? That simple shift in focus is the difference between a life of frustration and a life of fulfillment. Because the truth is, the fastest way to grow is to give. The fastest way to feel alive is to serve something bigger than yourself. Giving isn't about losing, it's about multiplying. When you give your best energy, you get energy back. When you give love without conditions, you receive deeper connection. When you give your gifts to the world, you activate purpose. And purpose is the fuel that drives a powerful life. People who don't feel alive, it's not because they're missing something on the outside. It's because they're withholding something on the inside. They're playing defense, they're holding back. They're stuck in a scarcity mindset that says, if I give too much, I'll be empty. But the truth is, the more you give, the more you grow. The more you pour out, the more you get poured into. Giving isn't always convenient. Sometimes it's uncomfortable. Sometimes it stretches you, but that's the point, because every time you give beyond what's easy, you stretch your capacity. You expand your soul. You increase your ability to carry more love, more strength, more wisdom, more purpose. And that expansion, that's where life gets rich, not just materially, but spiritually, emotionally. Energetically, life responds to generosity. It opens up when you do. It reflects back the energy you put into it. There's also a power in giving without expecting. Most people give conditionally. They keep score. They give only to those who can return the favor. But when you give with no agenda, when you show up just to serve, just to uplift, just to contribute, that's when you tap into something deeper. That's when you build unshakable fulfillment, because the secret to lasting joy isn't in what you gather, it's in what you give away. True leaders, real game changers, they're not remembered for how much they had. They're remembered for how much they gave. The time they sacrificed, the energy they invested, the difference they made, giving also deepens connection. We're wired to contribute. We're wired to care. When you give fully to another human being, when you listen without judging, help without boasting, serve without seeking recognition, you tap into your highest self. You stop operating from ego and start operating from essence. And in that state, life stops being transactional and becomes transformational. Relationships get deeper, experiences become richer, moments become more meaningful, and here's the paradox: the more you give, the more you live. Not just exist live, because giving pulls you out of numbness, it wakes you up, it gets you present. When you're focused on others, your problems don't disappear, but they shrink, they lose their grip. You stop being consumed by what's missing and start being empowered by what's possible. Giving reconnects you to gratitude, to purpose, to humanity. It's the antidote to isolation. It's the answer to stagnation. It's the key to vitality. You want to feel alive? Start giving more of yourself to the world. Not when it's easy, not when it's perfect.
No,